back to another episode of Modern Malayali. If you haven't done so already, please do follow and rate the podcast because it really does help the podcast grow. So in our last episode, we talked about the whole world of arranged marriage websites. So those endless profiles, the awkward conversations, and meeting strangers on the internet. But today, we're going to zoom out a little bit. We're going to talk about the pressure, the subtle, everyday kind that young Malayalis feel when it comes to marriage. Especially the guys who often don't get to share what it's like for them. From being expected to settle down to battling to find exactly what you're looking for in the Malayali community. So my guest today, Johan, is here to open up about exactly that. The struggle, the expectations, and what it's like trying to find someone in a world where it seems like there just aren't that many fish in the sea. So hi, Johan. Do you want to say hi?
Hey, Ria. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get into it. So I'm curious to know, for a guy, when do you think that pressure to get married and settle down first starts?
So from what I've seen, it really kind of depends, hey, because there's such a huge range for guys in terms of marriage ages. It usually seems to come down to like the individual, or actually no, more like the family marriage. Because I know guys who got married really, really young. And I also know some guys who haven't got married at all and aren't really bothered about it. They just sort of believe it'll happen when it does happen, and they're not too bothered, right? But I don't know. I think generally I'd say, like, from what I've seen, I think it's 27 is when the talks kind of start. And pressure is sort of once you cross like the early 30s, and then it's going to be like a thing of, oh, okay, no, come on. You got to kind of choose someone now already. And it also really depends on the type of person you are and what you want in life. If things like having kids by a certain age is really important, then that really does play a role in that, right?
Yeah.
It is, I guess, a bit different between girls and guys. I think maybe guys do reach that point just a lot later on, like maybe past 35. Guys have it a little nicer in that they can go quite a bit later on without having to get married and still be considered somewhat normal. Whereas for girls, I think past 30, then people just sort of, look down.
Definitely. Once you reach a certain age as a girl, if you're not married, your worth or your value decreases. And suddenly that's the only thing your family or your community can even talk about. It's, has she found a boy yet? Or who's she speaking to? When is she going to get married? It really becomes intense. But yeah, I don't think it's the same for guys, right?
No, it really isn't. I think it gets to a point where it does become that. But as I said, it's quite later on. I think when guys reach their mid-30s, I think that's when people are like, look, okay, things need to happen.
So for you, when did that pressure start? Like what age?
I think my parents started asking me when I was 26.
So young.
You'd think it's young, but if you look at the people in South Africa, you have a lot of people who got married pretty young, right? 26 isn't that young in that context, right? There are people younger than me who've gotten married. And I think at that point in time, my parents were just like, okay, well, firstly, they were like, do you have someone? And I was like, no. I was like, okay, what's your plan? And I was like, no plan. and then I think it just sort of started from there, right?
Yeah. So now you're 28 now, right?
Yeah.
And are you really starting to feel that kind of pressure? Is it just because all the other guys around your age have gotten married?
So I don't think it's pressure per se. It's just like a reality of now, like this thing should eventually happen. Because, I mean, like obviously you don't have to get married, but I'd preferably want to. So it's more of a reality of that, oh no, this will kind of have to eventually happen. And I think it really sort of hit home for me personally when my cousins, or my one cousin who I grew up with my whole life, and he's like a month or two younger than me, when he got married and I was at his wedding, I was like, oh, damn, this guy got married. I think that's when it sort of really occurred to me that, oh, within the next couple of years, this hopefully does happen,
Yeah. I think it was the same for me, actually, because once all of my cousins started to get married, then I realized, oh, wait, now I'm next.
Yeah, and there's always like a pecking order, right? Especially when you go to like family gatherings and stuff, it's like, oh, when is it your turn? And as long as there's like an older cousin, you can always push it off and be like, no, look, there's still this person. But once they start, falling off, then it's like, oh, I'm next type of vibe.
Yeah, all eyes are on you.
Yeah.
Have you ever been asked that, actually? When are you getting married, or is there someone in the picture?
All the time, hey. I think every family gathering, every wedding, weddings are a big one, right? Where some uncle and auntie are like, "Where do you when are you getting married?" Those are the times when I hear it the most. I remember this one uncle, he's like a fun uncle though, and he was probably kind of just poking fun at it. He was more like, you have to get married. ഞങ്ങൾക്കാർക്കൊന്നും സഹിക്കത്തില്ല നീ ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു റെസ്പോൺസിബിലിറ്റി ഇല്ലാതെ ഇങ്ങനെ ഫ്രീ ആയിട്ട് ജീവിക്കുന്ന like we can't take it, you have to get married. Yeah, there's always like people poke fun.
Yeah. What does it even mean though? Like, what's their problem with you just enjoying life?
I feel like they probably got married really young and they got clamped down.
And when you hear jokes and comments like that, does that make you more stressed, or do you just like laugh it off?
You always do kind of laugh it off in the moment. It's said in a very loving way, so you don't think about it, but then it obviously goes to the back of your mind that, oh shit, this person might have had some sort of a point,
Yeah, like there's always a little bit of truth behind every joke.
Exactly.
To be honest, this is really interesting for me because 28 is still really, really young from my perspective for a guy, that you're even getting comments like this. Your other male friends who are single, do you think they're also going through something similar?
I think they are, hey, especially the ones that are my age and maybe a year or two above. I think it is definitely on the talks right now. And I think a lot of it stems from this belief that, if you get married young, you're somewhat still malleable, that you can that you can change for your partner. I think that's the sort of sentiment I've been hearing from a lot of the people.
Like you can adjust easily.
You're not so fixed in your ways that you can't, or you find it more difficult.
Yeah. So you've been on those websites, right? What is your opinion on them? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Or do you just tolerate them?
The websites, initially, I really, really hated it. I feel like everybody does. But I think I've grown to tolerate it. And I think in the future, I might grow to like it. I think it's because it's a reality and like a pretty integral part of society now, right? And this, I don't mean just the marriage sites. I just mean like if you look at online dating platforms in general. Because let's be honest, once you finish with like school and university, etc., your social circles sort of become quite closed and very well formed. Meeting people isn't as easy. Some people might just not feel like putting in the effort to go and meet new people. So in those type of scenarios, I feel like dating platforms and marriage sites, etc., play a very key role in society. So I think it's pretty normalized right now. I know a lot of people might not have a grasp or understanding of like a marriage site, but then I feel like dating sites are sort of very similar, right? It's you're meeting a stranger over the internet type vibes.
Yeah, exactly. It's just your parents are more involved with this.
Yeah, your parents are way more involved. A lot more personal details are being shared.
Why did you say you hated them in the beginning?
Because it just felt so manufactured, right? Like it's not like an organic thing. Parents set you up with, I don't want to set you up. They just find a girl somewhere and then you're just expected to speak to this random stranger person who could potentially become your spouse, right? And I think I didn't like how it was completely inorganic. It didn't feel natural at all. And it took me a while to realize, but that's how it is going to be. At least for the first few times when you speak to someone, hopefully eventually it should become or should feel a lot more natural. But at least in the initial talking stages, it's going to feel very weird and very awkward. I didn't like that part of it.
I 100% agree. When you're having that first call or second call, you're sort of trying to gauge if you have chemistry with this person. And that is so difficult.
Yeah. And there's like a lot riding on it. And it's very difficult to sort of judge whether you're going to click with someone over like one or two calls, right? So that process is a bit tedious.
Yeah. How many people have you spoken to from the websites?
I have spoken to, in the 2 years, I think I've spoken to 6 people.
Okay.
From the 6, I think 4 were just sort of like 1 or 2 conversations. 1 was okay, but I don't know what happened there.
That's actually not a lot because I went through about 15 people in 2 years.
Yeah, but like I think at the end of the day, this is still like online dating thing, right? So it's heavily skewed towards girls. Like I remember my cousin was showing me her profile. I think she had over 1,000 or 2,000 interests
within
Oh
like
my gosh.
a few months, right? Yeah, whereas for guys, you don't get those numbers. As I said, very similar to like online dating platforms. A big number of those interests were just guys in India. Half of those, now that I think about it, half of those interests weren't even like eligible. They'd be like guys in their 40s, like, why are you sending an interest to someone 15 years younger than you? From those interests, I think maybe only a quarter of them were realistic or somewhat reasonable options.
Out of some of the interests that you got, did you get any interest from girls in India?
From the interest I receive, I think about 60 to 70% odd are from India, while the rest are dispersed around the world. And to be honest, one main thing that I think counts against a lot of South African guys is that people don't really want to move to South Africa. A lot of people don't realize how much of an amazing country South Africa is. Sure, we have our problems, but from the people that I do know who came from India to South Africa, majority of the time it's always somebody in the family kind of had some experience with a South African or an African country, and they have an idea of what it can be like here. So they usually have like an uncle who worked here or a friend who knows about South Africa or something like that. And they'd be a lot more open to coming down to South Africa.
Yeah. But do you want to stay in South Africa, or would you be open to moving to wherever she is?
No, nothing like that. I'm very open to moving to whichever country. Though I think from what I've seen, it's like a trend, right? Girls get shipped off while guys do the importing, right? More often than not, that's what I see is happening. I think, yeah, I don't know why that is. I mean, do you have any idea why it's like that?
I think it's just traditional. It's just always assumed that the girl is going to move to wherever the guy is. It's not always true, but in most cases, that's the sort of expectation, especially from the guy's family. But in my case and in my cousin's cases, we did want to leave South Africa, whether that was through marriage or through higher studies or whatever it was.
Yeah.
We didn't mind moving.
Mm-hmm.
But I can understand that, when a girl's family looks at a guy's profile and they see that he's from South Africa, they'll just be like, oh, where's that? We're not going to send our daughter to some place in Africa.
Yeah. There's a lot of that still happens, right? Girls who are based in other countries would filter off places like India because they usually wouldn't want to bring somebody over from India. But I feel like that would be the same if you're a guy in South Africa. Most of the time, they wouldn't want to bring over to whichever country they're in. They don't want to go through that admin. I think everybody would rather prefer somebody from their own place, right?
Yeah.
And I think that filter in itself really cuts down choices, not just for me, but for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
And look, no fault to them as well, right? You'd naturally just want somebody who's based in your country. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, that is sort of like the reality of the situation where you think, you have a lot more options because you're looking all over the world. But in reality, it's not that clear cut, especially when you have more filters on filters on filters, then the choices become very limited.
What are some of the other filters that you find are becoming a little bit of a challenge, like religion?
Oh, yeah. That's a big one. I'm Marthomite, and in terms of numbers, I feel like we're sort of like one of the least next to the Knars. And the dominant majority of Malayali people are Catholic. From what I've seen, a lot of Catholic girls will only go for a Catholic guy, which is really frustrating because Catholic guys on the opposite end will go for anything that moves.
Oh my gosh, literally.
It annoys me because these guys can then technically go for everyone. The small people that I can go for, these guys end up also going for them. It really cuts down your choices and your options quite a bit.
I'm Catholic and I come from a really big Catholic family. But we've really struggled to find Catholic people in South Africa. And the ones that we do know are either somehow related to us, or they're much younger than us, or they're already dating somebody else. A lot of the Catholic boys in South Africa are dating non-Malus.
Yeah, so it's like everybody loses.
Yeah, exactly. Do you ever expect the girl to convert, whether it's into your religion or even if it's just like taking your surname?
So those are two pretty loaded, but also slightly different. Convert in a sense of from another religion to Christianity, or like within the branches of Christianity?
Within the branches of Christianity.
Okay. Within the branches of Christianity, I think that is, and it's similar to surname. I think it should be like her choice of what she wants to do. I don't think I can say, no, you have to do this or you have to do that.
I feel like ultimately that is her prerogative, really.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like your friends or other guys in the community would have the same?
For my friends, I know they kind of all share the same opinion as well. But look, when it comes down to it, when family gets involved and tradition gets involved, I don't know how it'll play out or what that looks like, because that's a little bit of a different story. I know where it does get a little bit murky is when things like kids come along. Then it's like, okay, you know, whose surname do they take, or like which faith or which branch of Christianity are we going to bring them up in? You know, I think then it becomes a little bit more of a different conversation that, I don't know the answer to be honest.
Yeah. So I didn't take my husband's surname, but I guess we just assumed that our kids would take his surname.
And it
would be cool if they had my surname also.
No. I didn't put these ideas in her head, okay? She came up by herself. Please don't blame me.
Okay. What kind of expectations do you think families put on guys when they say it's time to settle down? Like when you're speaking to people from the website, have you ever felt the families expect you to be a certain way?
So my experiences on the website haven't been particularly bad. And to answer your question, I think oftentimes it's not from the girl, it's more from the parents or the families. Mm-hmm. They were very interested in your career and where your career is headed and what exactly you're doing and what your plan is in the future. And they obviously come from an understanding of what a career should look like. And when it differs from what they think, then it's more like, oh no, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But, you know, at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but I work in tech, you work in something completely different. Like, you wouldn't know what I'm talking about.
That's interesting, actually.
I think there's an implicit sort of understanding that the guy is like the provider and has to have all his shit sorted. You know, I think because of that, those are things that girls' parents will really, really want to inquire about and make sure that, you know, they're sending their girl off to the right place where she's going to be safe, etc.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's not what the girls want, right? These opinions are more expressed from their parents.
Interesting. Okay, I have another question and I'm just curious about this. If you had to compare your preferences in the kind of people you were speaking to from the beginning of this process to the end of this process. Okay, well, you haven't reached the end yet, but you're 2 years in. Do you think your preference for the kind of person you're looking for has changed?
I think when I started this journey, I had a very specific idea of what I looked for in a person. And that was based off, you know, people I might have been interested in the past. Like a strong idea of what I wanted. But, you know, when you go into something with that kind of mindset, you're setting yourself up for like failure more often than not. I spoke to one of my close friends about this and something he said, and he said this like probably like last year or something. He told me something that I'm not going to lie is how I look at everything now, is that your expectations and what you want in a person, more often than not, you cater it to whatever person is standing in front of you. Obviously, you have things that you can't be flexible on, whatever those may be, but for the rest of the things, you adjust it to whoever is standing in front of you, because that person is in themselves a unique human being, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. Very true.
He didn't say it exactly like that. The way he said it sounded a lot better. I need to go ask.
No, but that is good advice.
You know?
How do you think the whole process of speaking to people is different for girls versus guys in terms of the kind of red flags we look for?
I think, and I'm not going to lie, this only really occurred to me after I listened to your previous podcast, was how red flags in guys can be picked up, probably not for everyone, but like for a good majority, you can pick certain things up relatively quickly, like all those red flags Apu mentioned. Whereas for girls, it's not as easy. And like, does it mean that girls don't have red flags? No, I don't think so. You don't pick it up as quick, and these things usually only come out when you're actually in it. And that is a bit scary. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if you agree, right? First, I feel like that's the way the world is right now. There's always a list of red flags that can be attributed to a guy. So I think it's always easier to pick up with guys. With girls, I don't know, man. The only thing I think I'd pick up really quickly, or it's something that really does bother me, is if someone's like a misandrist. I think that's a big red flag for me personally. But thankfully, I haven't come across that from anyone that I've spoken to on the sites and stuff.
The kind of red flags that you would pick up in girls later on in the relationship, it's sort of the same as well for guys, right? Because I think those kind of red flags you're talking about, like toxic personality or just unhealthy ways of communicating or things like that. But that's also the same with guys as well.
100%. So it's a roll of a dice either way. Totally agree with what you're saying.
It is kind of scary that those kind of red flags you can only pick up at least 2-3 months down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about some red flags with families, with parents, not the person, but their family?
Oh, so I don't know if this is as much of like a red flag, but I've had some very interesting scenarios. So can I share if you don't mind?
Yeah.
For like some a little bit more background context, I was traveling for work this one time, and my parents called me up late at night at like 8 or 9, and hey, just like there's this girl, she's based in America, sent an interest, accepted. Do you mind speaking? And I was like, yeah, no problem. And then they're like, okay, cool. Can you speak to the dad now? Now, it's like I have work tomorrow in the morning. I was like, yeah, but it's morning time for them, so they're free now. Can you just give them a bit of a chat? And, I was like, okay, cool. Firstly, I thought it was pretty weird that this girl's dad was the first person that called me, right? And I didn't know what to expect from it. I went into it just thinking, okay, whatever. And so we got on the call, and it was like a minute of small talk and all that. And then all of a sudden, this man starts grilling me like... I can't explain, dude. He just starts coming out there with all of these questions, and I'm completely flustered at that point. He's questioning everything I've done in life. He was like, okay, tell me, what is your relationship with Christ? I was like,
How do you even answer that question?
I don't know. I think I said something like, it's good, or some nonsense like that, right? Like, it was completely, like, out of the blue. And then he started questioning why I did engineering, but then went into more software and tech, and why I did this and why I did that. And I was just like, like, honestly, dude, like, please leave me alone, dude. And then he just starts listing this girl's accolades one by one. He's like, oh no, she was top 30, under 30 for medical something. Everybody loves her. She's this amazing ass person. And I still remember the one thing he said. So apparently, like, it takes like X number of years to do medicine in the US, but you can get it done in a year or something earlier, which is not easy, apparently, but she did it. And that was like a big thing for him. He was telling me this, and then in my head, I was like, damn, bro, what am I going to say to that? All I have is engineering, a 4-year degree in South Africa. I took 6. Like, I had nothing, right? Like, especially at that point in time when you're not prepared for like an interview, I was absolutely grilled, and that sort of ruined it, right? After that interaction, poor girl, like, she was probably a very nice person or whatever, but like, I never even spoke to her. After that, I was like, hell no. I remember calling my parents like an hour later. I was like, what the hell was that? Like, are you serious?
No, that sounds horrible, honestly. Horrible.
Yeah, that wasn't a fun experience.
But have you had to speak to any other girls' dads? Or was that the only one?
Yeah. Out of the 6, I think 2 of them I spoke to the girls' dads first. It's a shame, because the second uncle was a little bit more chilled. He didn't really say anything much. He just wanted to say hello, etc., etc. He was a lot more tame. Shame. But like, the second uncle happened after the first one. So this time I was ready, bro. I had things to say. I had all my accolades listed and everything. But
oh, shame. That sounds so nerve-wracking.
Like, it's already kind of awkward when you're speaking to like the actual girl or guy who's like your peer, kind of, and now you're speaking to like their parents, who's literally some random uncle halfway around the world. And that was just like, it was really weird.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit. Do you think our generation sees marriage differently compared to our parents?
Most definitely. I think for our parents, especially where they came from, coming from India, I don't think they thought too much about it. My parents and a lot of the uncles and aunties I know, it was like 1 or 2 conversations, and that was it. And then they got married. And once they got married, like, it was moving to another country. The main focus was survival in their life. I feel like our generation, it's a lot more about thriving. We all look to thrive in whatever we do, whether it's career, and now for relationships. Like, you don't want to just settle and go for someone because everyone says it's the right thing. You want to go for someone and be happy, right? And be genuinely happy with that person. So I think marriage as a construct is viewed very differently for people in our generation,
Yeah, that's so true, actually. Our generation we're very intentional in what we choose. And like you said, our parents probably, they didn't have that much of a say. It was mainly the elders choosing for them, and then they just kind of had to go with it.
Yeah, they sort of had to roll with it. And look, and I think they've all probably done really well, right? Big ups to them.
Yeah.
To have come far in life and to have, helped us to come this far in life as well.
Yeah.
Big shout out to the parents.
Okay, then the last question. If there's one thing that you've learned through this whole process, what would that be?
Probably the biggest thing I've learned is like your mindset. You need to want this. It can't come from external pressure. It can't come from your parents. You need to want to be there. You need to want to speak to people. You need to want to find a partner. And I only realized this like a bit later on. So when I first got onto this site, right, I think my parents and a lot of people just said, look, just give it a try and stuff. So I agreed to it. But I remember thinking to myself, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this. I convinced myself, even though I didn't really want to do it, I convinced myself to give it a shot and to give it a chance. But by doing that, it doesn't mean the other person owes me anything, right? Sure, I convinced myself to do that, but I still got to try it, right? It's not like, I'm here, now the other person needs to do all the work. It's not like that. And it goes both ways, because this can become very frustrating, because this was at a time where I just gotten on the side. As I said, I convinced myself that I'm going to do this, I'm going to speak, etc., etc. And then I remember speaking to, I think, one of the first girls I spoke to. And I quickly realized that this person also didn't want to be there and was not keen on this at all. And that's what sort of like hit me. Like, I've convinced myself to be here. Now I've got to convince the other person to want to be there and want to speak on top of that. Like, nah. I can't do that. So I think that's very important. Like, you have to be in the right mental space. You sort of have to know what you're getting yourself into, and you need to be willing to do this, right? Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. You're wasting the other person's time. And I say this, and I feel like I've wasted people's time. So just so that nobody else wastes anybody else's time.
Yeah, fair enough. What you've just said, it goes hand in hand with the fact that by wanting to be there, that also means you have to be patient and you have to be putting in effort.
Yeah, I think that's actually a big thing, and I'm glad you brought it up. We're all so busy with our careers and everything that no one seems to have the time anymore. But like, unfortunately, you can't just be like, no, I'm busy. But then like, this also needs to happen at the same time, right? And I was guilty of it as well. Like, it's unfair for me to be like, no, I'm busy, and the other person has to move her life around the obscure times that I happen to be a bit free, right? And so I think that's also one big thing to consider. No one's just sitting, right? Everyone's busy. So keeping that in mind when you go into this is also somewhat important.
Yeah, true. I say also be patient. You don't owe anyone a timeline. And it's better to wait for the right connection than to settle just because you're panicking or your parents are panicking or some random auntie or uncle are panicking.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. But I think just to add a small caveat there, right? It's a nice thing that everyone says and people just sort of agree with and clap that like you shouldn't timeline these things and etc. etc. But like, the reality of it is like that life, unfortunately, does have a timeline, right? Depending on what you want in life, if you know that you want to have kids by a certain age and stuff, then your efforts will naturally have to match that, right? You'd have to be a lot more proactive in that sense. You can't then be like, oh no, there's no timeline, somebody has to fall into my lap type vibes.
Yeah.
You have to be a lot more intentional in this process.
Exactly. And I think also prayer and faith have a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, like ultimately there is a higher power involved, and you just sort of have to trust, have a certain amount of trust as well,
Yes, exactly.
It's so easy for me to come here and say this and that, but like actually implementing is so difficult.
It's so easy for me being on this side saying all of this stuff.
Oh yeah, you're sorted, right? So
no, but I remember what it felt like, and I know that it can be a bit stressful and stuff, but I do believe at the right time, the right person will come.
Precisely.
So yeah, thank you so much, Johan, for joining me and for being so honest about what guys go through in this whole process. It was definitely very interesting for me. But if you're someone who's going through the same process, just remember, be patient. And like Johan said, you have to have that right mindset. You have to put in the time and the effort. And there's no deadline as well. So don't pressurize yourself if you feel like things are taking a really long time. And whether you find your partner through an app or through an auntie or just by chance, what matters most is that it feels right for you. So take your time, figure out what you truly want, and don't let that pressure drown out your peace, because I think a lot of us know what that pressure feels like, and it can feel very suffocating. So thank you for listening to this episode of Modern Malayali. And if you haven't yet, please do follow and rate the podcast. I'd really, really appreciate it. And that's it from us. Bye.